Welcome. We're so glad you're here for this special explainer from Revival Waves of Glory Ministries. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible teachings of Bill Vincent, specifically from his book, Faith Ignited, Living in the Supernatural. We're going to explore the very keys he talks about for unlocking a life that is just filled with divine encounters and, yes, miracles. So, right off the bat, the whole idea behind Faith Ignited is built on this really powerful picture of keys. The book suggests that God doesn't just want us to, admire the supernatural from afar. No, he actually provides specific, practical tools, keys to unlock and even start incredible things in our lives. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's about getting access to a whole new level of experience with him. So, how exactly do these keys work? Well, the book introduces a core concept right away, something called a threefold cord. You know how a rope woven from three different strands is incredibly strong, right? It's not easily broken? Well, in the same way, these three spiritual elements, faith, God's presence, and the anointing, they work together, creating this powerful synergy that unlocks the supernatural. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that foundational threefold cord. Then we'll get into the different levels of faith. From there, we'll unpack what the book actually means by presence and impartation, look at some absolutely mind-blowing stories of miracles, and then we'll finish up with a really crucial topic, having the wisdom to handle these powerful revelations. Okay, let's dive right in and look closer at this foundational idea. I mean, this is really the engine that drives everything else in the book. It's this concept of three interwoven cords that, when they come together, create something so much stronger than any single one of them could be alone. According to Bill Vincent, these are the indispensable elements. It's not just about having faith. It's about having faith combined with a tangible, real awareness of God's presence, and it's all activated by what he calls the anointing. That's the divine empowerment for a specific task or moment. When these three things line up, the potential for supernatural experiences just skyrockets. All right, that first and most talked about cord is faith. And what's so fascinating is that the book explains that faith isn't just this one-size-fits-all concept. Not at all. Instead, it exists in different degrees or levels, and each one has its own purpose and function in a believer's life. So the book categorizes faith into these three distinct types. First, you've got the faith we all receive at our new birth. Then there's a kind of faith that we can intentionally develop and grow over time. And finally, there's this special kind of faith that just comes as a direct gift from God for a specific moment or specific situation. Now let's just focus on that second one for a second, the idea of developed faith. This is where it gets really practical, you know? The book really emphasizes that this isn't a passive thing. It's just like a muscle. If you don't use it, it's going to stay weak. But if you intentionally exercise it, by stepping out, by taking risks, by being obedient, even when it makes zero sense, it grows stronger and stronger. So how do you actually exercise that faith muscle? Well, the book shares this personal story that just demonstrates it perfectly. Imagine this. You're facing a $400 car repair, but you've only got $2 in the bank. That feels impossible, right? But an act of pure obedience, just showing up at the mechanic like God said to, led to a miraculous outcome. It was a total divine setup, designed to build that developed faith. Okay, let's move on to the next strand of the cord and see how this all builds. Because it's not just about our personal faith. It's also about learning to recognize and tap into God's tangible presence and what the book calls the ministry of impartation. And this is where things get really dynamic. The book describes this as something you can actually feel, a palpable, noticeable power in the atmosphere that is specifically there to do things like healings and signs and wonders. It even suggests this presence can linger, and it references that incredible story from the Bible where a dead man was revived just by touching the bones of the prophet Elisha. I mean, wow. Now, a key concept here is divine timing. The book makes this crucial distinction between two Greek words for time. You've got chronos, which is just clock time, right? 1 minute after another. But then there's kairos, and kairos is a strategic, opportune, God-appointed moment. The author argues that learning to recognize when a kairos moment is happening is a major key to unlocking the supernatural. You know, we are really just scratching the surface of these deep concepts here. For anyone who wants to go further, to dive deeper into these teachings on God's presence, on impartation, on divine timing, the ministry's website, revivalwavesofgloryministries.com, is just an incredible resource, absolutely packed with teachings. So, what happens when that developed faith we were talking about collides with a kairos moment of God's manifest presence? Well, that's when things get truly extraordinary. The book is just filled with accounts of miracles that completely defy natural explanation. And it's a fair question, right? What does this actually look like in real life? The author doesn't just leave it as some theoretical idea. He answers by providing these vivid, first-hand accounts of what happens when these principles are actually put into practice. Okay, get ready for this one. This is one of the most dramatic stories in the book. A friend, an apostle in training with blue hair, was being challenged by God to believe for $25,000. With the deadline getting closer and closer, God told him to open an empty hotel drawer 7 times. I mean, can you imagine? It was an act of radical obedience and faith. And after the 7th time, the money supernaturally appeared. It was a life-changing encounter for everyone who saw it. And it doesn't stop there. In another powerful example from the book, the author talks about the Litchfield revival. He saw a vision of $100 bills floating down from heaven, and soon after, people just started finding them in their Bibles, in their purses. Over $1,000 in cash was supernaturally provided, proving that God's provision can show up in the most unexpected ways. This account is such a powerful example of that third type of faith, the gift of faith. The author was instructed by God to promise that every single person at this conference would be healed, a promise that went way beyond his past experience. But operating under this specific God-given surge of faith for that moment, he saw incredible miracles, including people getting right up out of their wheelchairs and deaf ears popping open. So, receiving these incredible supernatural gifts is one thing, but stewarding them correctly, that's a whole other ballgame. Without the right character and wisdom, the book warns, these powerful revelations can actually cause a lot of harm. And that's why a good chunk of time is spent on this vital topic. I just love this analogy. It's so clear and so powerful. A pot of boiling water is a really useful thing, right? But if you try to grab it with your bare hands, you're going to get severely burned. In the exact same way, divine revelation is a powerful gift, but if it's mishandled through pride or gossip or just bad timing, it can burn you and the people around you. So to avoid getting burnt, the author provides these incredibly practical steps. Instead of just declaring things, learn to ask questions. Use revelation as fuel for prayer, not for gossip. Share what you're sensing with trusted leaders. Don't be afraid of the natural tension that true revelation can bring. Learn not to share every single thing you receive. And finally, learn how to deflect praise back to God. This is the wisdom that protects the gift. So, to summarize our whole journey through Faith Ignited, these are the core takeaways. The supernatural isn't random. It's unlocked by that synergy of faith, presence, and anointing. Our faith isn't static. It is a muscle we absolutely must develop. We have to learn to recognize those strategic kairos moments. And all of this leads to a reality where miracles are possible, but they have to be handled with profound wisdom. If this explainer has sparked your interest, you should know that we've really only scratched the surface. Bill Vincent has actually authored over 125 books on these topics and so much more. You can explore this vast library of teachings and resources at the ministry's official website. That's revivalwavesofgloryministries.com. And we'll end with the question this entire book seems to pose to its reader. If faith is a key, and if you hold the keys in your hand, the keys to faith, the keys to God's presence, what doors are right in front of you, just waiting to be unlocked? Thank you for listening to the Deep Dive Podcast.